Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. Just had a magnificent conversation with Minnesotan, that's right, Colleen Rowley, the FBI whistleblower, who was one of Time Magazine's Persons of the Year from 2002. I encourage you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so you can see the whole interview. She gave us a lot of great information. Will the U.S. military be deployed on our streets? Will that happen? Well, now, look, we have something else to look at. For the third time, it seems that, well, even though the Democrats are in the minority, we don't know after 2026, at least 7 articles of impeachment have been introduced with respect to the president. This would be the third time that he would be impeached. What do you think about that, everybody? And in fact, guess what? Axios is reporting this, that the Trump team is wargaming another impeachment. That is to say, they have different people that they have selected, and they're playing out what an impeachment would look like. And they're dealing with the arguments for and against it, and how they're going to argue to save him from being impeached, or to save him from being convicted after impeachment. Because impeachment is an indictment, everybody. Impeachment does not put you out of office. It's charges that are brought against you. They have to be proved or disproved. If they're proved, well, then that goes to another level. The question is whether you'll stay in office or not. If you're found not guilty, it ends right in the House of Representatives. Well, according to Axios, President Trump's advisors are seriously considering the likelihood that he would be impeached again if Democrats take the House next year. You know what, everybody? I'm going to reach out to David Daley to get him back on the show, and I'm going to see if I can get you all on, Attorney Mark Bancher and you, Attorney Darrell Jones, because he has been talking about his new book, with Anti-Democratic, shows how the system has been rigged to keep the left out of power, out of elective office. They can predict with about 80% certainty who's going to win their seat. You guys, this is not the way this is supposed to go in this republic. It's not. So, what do you think about that? I mean, will this happen? And you don't have to ask if it might maybe happen. Guess what? A congressman from Tanadar, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He is from the great state of Michigan. And guess what? He's up there with you, Mark. He submitted 7 articles of impeachment. I said, wow. I said, okay. And he has. So I want to know what you think, everybody. He filed 7 articles of impeachment against President Trump. He wrote or said in a statement, quote, Donald Trump has repeatedly demonstrated that he is unfit to serve as president and represents a clear and present danger to our nation's constitution and our democracy. His unlawful actions have subverted the justice system, have violated the separation of powers, and placed personal power and self-interest above public service. We cannot wait for more damage to be done. Congress must act. What did you think? He alleges that he has violated the Constitution I'll just give you a few: obstruction of justice and the abuse of executive power, including denial of due process, unlawful deportations, defiance of court orders, and misuse of the Department of Justice. Remember, everybody, we've got the imperial presidency now. We have 3 co-equal branches of government. The president, the executive branch does not supersede that of Congress, nor does it supersede that of the judiciary. Nancy Pelosi, when she was speaker, was right when she confronted President Trump and said, I am your co-equal. If you don't believe it, guys, oh, I wish you could see what the office of the speaker looks like, the privileges that are afforded them, because they are in direct line of succession to the presidency. They're right there. So what do you think? I mean, he listed 7 violations: usurpation of appropriations power, dismantling congressionally established agencies. They don't have the right to dismantle agencies. That's Congress's job. It's their obligation. Abuse of trade powers and international aggression, including imposing economically damaging tariffs and threatening military invasion against sovereign nations. Violation of First Amendment rights. We're disappearing people, everybody. And they're even talking about putting the military on our streets to prevent crime. It's written very, very broadly. This is an executive order. So please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet Bernadette there, who was there first. Hey, girl, like and share. Errol, how you doing? Sending you so much love. That's right. Mike, sending you much love. Snowman, much love to you. Everybody, like and share. Like and share. You help us with the algorithm when you do like and share and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and become my friend on Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. I am on Blue Sky, the santitajackson.bsky.social link. Go there. And then I'm at Santita J on X. So, what do we make of yet another push at the impeachment of the president? We've got attorney Mark Fancher with us and attorney Daryl Jones. Attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian, brilliant lawyer, and social critic. And you, Attorney Daryl Jones, you're just pivoting off of your radio show on WOL every Tuesday. You and Barbara Arnwine have a magnificent show. It's on at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Well, let me start with you, Daryl. You're down there in the DC bubble. What do you make of this? I said, oh, wow, every day it's something new.
Well, Santita, you're right on.
I mean, what he outlined was not unfunny. That was serious.
A lot of serious allegations were outlined. And I think that, what folks have been looking for has been the Democratic response or the pushback to what President Trump has thrown out and all that he's doing and expanding the powers of the presidency. And so I think that what we see with Congressman Thanadar is precisely that. It's a step and a Democratic response to what's going on. People want to see if the Democratic Party is going to stand up and fight for what they believe. Are they going to really stand up and fight back? And I think that what Congressman Thanadar is trying to demonstrate is his willingness to fight back by filing these articles of impeachment and looking at the allegations that he's made, with regards to the denial of due process when it comes particularly to the deportation of now some American citizens, as well as some folks that were here as immigrants, as undocumented folks. That's going to be a very interesting one if it can gain any legs, and that's the real question. Will it gain any traction? And one of the responses to what Congressman Thanadar certainly has put out is going to deal with the politicalization of it all. Is he doing this because he's going to be in a contested race? Is he doing this because others in Michigan now are stepping up and saying, and the folks around the country now are stepping up and saying, what have you all done, Democratic Party? What steps have you taken? What bold initiative have you done? How have you put your chest out and said, I'm not going to have this? And this appears to be a response to that, rather than something that may have just been genuine at the time that it occurred. But it's going to be up to the congressman to walk that fine line. And I know, Mark is in Michigan, so he probably has a much better feel for what the congressman is up to if the real purpose really is to go after articles of impeachment based on the actions of the presidency more than the survival of the politician and that member of Congress. And that's going to be one of the key things that's going to become really big here. Clearly, the Democratic Party is trying to shake off this image of the do nothing Democrats that they've had the image of. And I think the statement from some of them has been to, and Senator Schumer in particular, has been to sit back. Let's see what happens. Let's let some of the popularity way down, go away for President Trump, and let some of the negativity come up, and then we can move forward. And that's a do nothing position, and that's not what Democrats or independents right now in this country are looking for. They're looking for someone to take action. And I think that what Congressman Thanadar is indicating is that this is an action that he has taken. So it's going to be interesting to see if it gets politicized or if it really does have some teeth to it and can move the needle somewhat. We know that Democrats don't control the Congress to be able to, even what we will call the indictment or the articles of impeachment to be able to get it passed. The question is, though, will it be setting the table for 2026? Because this will be that beginning of the pushback for more members, perhaps, of the Democratic Party to get elected to the House of Representatives in 2026 and be able to really come forward with articles of impeachment, Santita.
Well, they're doing so much of this because now we have our governor in the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who is, and he has been quite honest about wanting to be president, and he is campaigning. His early speeches are about the do nothing Democrats. The problem is these are all the Democrats who have been doing nothing. Now I can't say that just exactly about J.B. Pritzker. He has, made this a sanctuary state. That having been said, this is also the establishment, and Americans are looking for something so much more than rhetoric. Do nothing Democrats, please, none of them do anything. What they do is work with each other to manage the oligarchy. They're the corporocrats and the corporicans. That's what they are. And they're saying that within the next couple of weeks, we're going to have empty store shelves, Daryl and Mark.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Now, they just had a massive power outage in Spain and Portugal. You think that can't happen here? And you got the president talking about deploying the troops. A.G. Bondi, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, look into it. Posse Comitatus, what's that? After the World War, after the Civil War, we said we do not want to put Americans in the position of having to oversee their brethren and sisterin in as militarists. Well, this is where we are, and people have no money. You're gonna have empty store shelves. I mean, people wouldn't be able to loot the stores if they tried. I mean, so it's like, what are you all talking about, really? I mean, really, 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 really. So, I mean, Mark, you tell me what you're thinking. I mean, because really, I just say, it's troubling because I'm talking to people who are using whatever extra monies they can to get extra canned goods, just because they are expecting and they're reporting that things are about to get really bad for everybody. What about this impeachment? What do you expect it to move the needle at all?
Well, I don't watch electoral politics that closely, but from my casual observation, Shri Thanadar is quite genuine, quite sincere. He's well liked among many people here. Some cynics might suggest that he's doing this because he is facing a challenge by other candidates. But, be that as it may, I just generally, at this stage, am not inclined to think that things that are done which are essentially symbolic have much practical value. It's at this point somewhat cumulative. To have a successful impeachment program against Donald Trump really doesn't discredit him any more than he's already been discredited by prior impeachment and by 34 felony convictions. I mean, he is an individual who has been so discredited and so invalidated in so many ways that at this point, anything else that you do to label him as someone who is a bad actor, it's somewhat cumulative. And I think that if we want to have any type of practical impact on the mischief that he's making, that it really falls particularly to Congress to, in the words of Nancy Reagan, just say no. He signs all of these executive orders and then acts on them without congressional authority many times when it's required. And in those cases, then it's useful to just go to court, as people have been doing recently, and to seek injunctions for those things which are submitted to Congress for purposes of validation or authorization. Congress should just say no. But beyond that, it seems that his general strategy has been and continues to be to just continue to generate shiny objects for people to chase, to create distraction with all kinds of new outrageous activities and initiatives and projects that people feel that they're inclined to respond to. And that's part of the plan. And I don't know that there's any value in trying to dance to his tune. I think that people generally should just tune him out. He thrives on attention and people obsessing over every move that he makes and everything that he does. And I think he should just be practically ignored. And I think that the energy that is put into trying to respond to everything that he does, much of it going nowhere. I mean, how far has his project to invade Greenland gone? I mean, or to take over Greenland gone? I mean, how far has his initiative to establish a tourist resort in Palestine gone, in Gaza? There are a lot of things that he says that just really don't go anywhere. And if we invest a lot of time and energy in trying to respond to all of that, then we just wear ourselves out. And I think that time and energy and resources are better spent on looking at the ways in which uh, the masses of people are potentially vulnerable in these kinds of situations. If we are facing shortages with respect to consumer goods and with respect to other products and things that we need in order to function, we might want to start looking to, as oppressed communities in particular, to establishing relationships with other oppressed communities and countries and governments in other parts of the world for to create opportunities for direct access and direct trade and exchange with those countries. For example, some years ago, when Hugo Chavez was leading Venezuela, and there were problems in poor communities with home heating oil.
Yeah.
Uh, he was willing to make that available at low and no cost to poor communities in the United States. There, I think this may still go on. And Cuba has made available to low-income uh, young people, and particularly young people of color in the United States, opportunities for all expense paid free medical education in their medical school. And there's so many opportunities like that that I think that we could develop and nurture so that notwithstanding things that the US government, whoever may be leading it, may try to do to make life miserable and rough for people in this country, because of our brother and sisterhood with other oppressed humanity in other parts of the world, we have our own foreign policy. We have our own trade policies. We have our own economy, which exists separate and apart from that of the US. And we build rather than just respond and react.
Mhm.
We see ourselves as, uh, in effect, a nation within a nation that's comprised of people of goodwill, people who want to go a different way, people who want to ensure human rights for themselves and for others. And we act accordingly, and we get over the idea that we have to make the United States government responsive to our needs because it's not set up to do that. It's not designed to do that. And we just have to be creative and proactive. We have to seek independence. And when we do that, then I think we set ourselves up ultimately for an effective struggle for liberation, which is something that, particularly for those of us of African ancestry, that our ancestors have been were trying to achieve from the time that they first arrived on these shores.
Well, but let me ask you, because I hear you, but the fact is, even though, ironically, even though Americans do not trust the legacy media. I mean, the numbers are absurdly high, not absurdly high, deservedly high. I should put it that way, because they serve corporate interests. That is still how people are getting their news. Older people, not younger people, older people. Younger people have long since abandoned uh, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, all that. Fox, while they rule the roost within a context. I mean, the fact is, Joe Rogan and now Amy Poehler and podcasters and people like that. And please, the biggest network in the United States is YouTube. That's where the eyeballs are. You know, there's something called realpolitik. I mean, the fact is, people do react to an impeachment. They do. And how will they react? Because people are wanting something. And, and there's something, I think, just very deep in the human soul, vengeance. Yes, I know the Bible has told us vengeance is the Lord's, and it is true. But people want to flog someone. And you look at President Trump's polling numbers, which are falling. I'm not going to say they're tanking because they're just falling if you look at them, Attorney Mark Fanch and Attorney Daryl Jones. It's not a precipitous fall. It is a steady fall. I think we have to be honest about that. I mean, so the question is, how will people react to this?
Well,
I
see,
mean, if he is impeached again, just how will people, because, it will take up a lot of space. And while you're right, Hugo Chavez said, look, you need gas. I have Chevron. And they are in your communities. Black people, poor people, go get it. And you couldn't really get the word out about that. And of course, the offer was viewed derisively, which was terrible. Because it was an opportunity for us, Mark. It was an opportunity for us, Daryl. So my question is, what about? I think that you're right. I think that we would be well served by looking at other options that we have. That's why it's important. When you look at other communities, they stay in touch with their homelands. They were not ripped from them either, and they exchange. You and I talked about this yesterday, Mark. Oh, we don't do that, not so much. So my question is, while we are planted in America and people's mindsets are what they are, how do you think they will react? Maybe that's the question I should ask. And the course of action they could take. Let me start with you, Mark, and then go back to you, Daryl.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I think that it's really sort of useless exercise. I get it. People are angry and they want to strike out. My only point, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. They shouldn't resist. I'm just suggesting it should be done effectively. And an impeachment effort is cumulative. It does nothing. It doesn't. In fact, I think I read something where the White House staff is laughing about it. They're saying, "Bring it on." We've been there before, and we're happy to have that happen. They got nothing to lose, and why invest all of that time and energy in something that means nothing? There are other ways to be effective, and other ways to resist, which mean something, and which don't fall into the traditional, conventional ways of reacting and resisting. The civil rights movement was effective when it used marches and demonstrations and things like that. And people just get it in their heads that that's the only way that you show displeasure. But I think at this point, and I've said it before, that's an ineffective tactic to use if you really want to demonstrate your displeasure, or if you really want to make people in power to become concerned. There are more effective and creative ways of doing it. And I think one of the best ones is after Trump first started, condemning DEI and saying that he's going to scrub the federal government of it and everything else. And Target, was weak-kneed and cowardly and jumped up without anybody asking them to, and said that we're going to get rid of all of our DEI programs as well. That the word went out. I mean, we don't control the media. Black people don't control the mass media. But
Mhm.
boy, the word went out very effectively that we ain't shopping at Target anymore. And within a very short period of time, Target comes back and they're on the phone to Al Sharpton and anybody else that will take their calls, saying we was just playing. We really didn't mean to do this. Will you all please come back and shop with us, because their bottom line had been impacted. That their profits had gone way down. Their foot traffic in their stores was way down, and in fact, that's ongoing, and it's
Yeah,
getting
it still
worse.
is. Yes.
And so that's the way that you react in ways that mean something. You figure out how it is that you make the comfortable very uncomfortable. You figure out ways in which you can mess with their money. You figure out ways in which you can impact the things that they really care about, and then you do it. And I've never been worried or concerned about the fact that we don't control the media, because when we want to, we can get the word out across the country and in fact around the world like lightning. I mean, I always said growing up, especially in the 1960s when I was a little kid, um, and my older brother would come home and say, "Hey, this is the new dance that's going around," and he'd start doing this thing, and I would say, "Where did this come from?" "Oh, this is what they're doing in Brooklyn. This is what they're doing in California." This is back before the internet. This is back before we had any opportunities for communicating in that way. But somehow these things managed to travel through the Black community from coast to coast within a matter of hours, days. So we have ways of doing this.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm hearing you. How do you do this in government?
Same way. Same way. We know how to do it. I don't know if it's written down in a manual any place,
No, it's
but
just we have our history shows that we have known how to do it. You know, with leaders who were not co-opted, who put it all on the line and move the needle. It's just we have now many of us are so wedded to power. It has made it much more difficult, Daryl.
No, that's without question. And I tell you, one of the things that that sort of struck me as Mark was speaking was that we're talking about the tool of impeachment, and could it have any impact? Could it have any effect, any practical effect? Or will it just be a theater type thing, and it's just really just for show and for political pleasure? And one of the things we know with this impeachment process and this president is that the Democrats took two shots at him before, right, with the impeachment process, and we had the articles of impeachment that were passed, and of course the Senate did not convict him of the allegations. So it at best has had a scar. It doesn't. Just on a practical level, I don't think there's reason to believe that the Democrats are going to have control of both the House and the Senate during this presidential period. And so it has the appearance then of being somewhat theatrical rather than really practical in terms of its response. It's sort of like, you've seen this song, you've seen this play. It's like the dog is chasing his tail. When will the dog realize it's his tail? Because it's just keep going around and around in this circle. That's sort of the appearance that this could have. But there's another side to this too, I think. And I think the other side to this is this. This time through, the American people are in a different position than when they were when other impeachment articles were brought against this president. What I mean by that is this. We already see Americans around this country that are in the streets angry. They're doing the hands off, and all the other protests that are going on now. Not just one grouping of Americans, but we see Black Americans that are African Americans that are out there. We see white Americans that are out there. We see all these different Americans that are out there that are angry over the actions that this president has taken. So the question then becomes, when you take that and you couple it with the inability of Americans to meet their rent, the inability of Americans to afford groceries, the inability of Americans to have the gas, the oil, and all the other things that are going on with this tariff. and you couple all that together and you put the rally with the anger and the issues and the impeachment, then I think you have a sort of a different, thing that you're dealing with there. There's a different thing that's growing and potentially growing out of this. And so, with that type of background, with that type of strategy that's in place, if that is the strategy that's in place, I think that this could really grow some legs with regards to the 2026 election and how the House of Representatives may look. I don't know, and I don't believe that the indictment of the president or the articles of impeachment will be passed, and certainly no conviction that would occur. But I do believe that it sets a different groundwork for what's happening.
Well, I'm wondering because you're right. Things have changed. A lot of the quiet part is being said out loud, and there's more mistrust of our governing institutions than ever before because we see so much that is so dishonest. You say one thing, but you see that it works another way. The far right have been on a campaign to gerrymander people on the left out of power, and they have been effective. And the so-called left has done nothing about it. Nothing. So now you have a vice chair, and I have no reason to impeach or otherwise impugn the motives of David Hogg, the young vice chair of the DNC, who is saying, I'm raising money, or I have raised money, to go after do-nothing Democrats. And then I see J.B. Pritzker, do-nothing Democrats. I'm hearing the same thing from a lot of the same people, which makes me go, what is this? At the same time, I can't get any of them in a picture with Bernie Sanders. Oh, this is the same party that buried him. It's what they do. And so, and these young people, Daryl, Mark, they are gone. They have left the building. They are not thinking about the two-party system. People need to understand that. Well, we need to get real about that. That's over. That's changed. So, so where do we go from here? Because I think that, the articles that he outlined, I only really skimmed over about 3 or 4 of them for us. They are serious, for real. And I think they make a lot of sense. But I'm wondering if they will make a dent. And certainly you can't go anywhere if they don't get enough votes. In the House of Representatives, this is going nowhere. And even though the majority of Americans feel this way, the polls are showing that. Not the majority of Republicans, although many of them are now unsettled by what's happening. But look, if the economy took a turn tomorrow toward the better, all this would be put to rest. Mm-hmm. Even though all the things that we're talking about are really questions that are fundamental to the existence of the republic. What kind of nation are we going to be? Because we're not talking about the president asking the attorney general and the secretary of defense, how do I use the military to prevent crime in the United States? Hello. And mind you, they're not really deporting a lot of people. What they're doing is rounding up people who are sympathetic with Palestinians. That's who they're jailing and deporting. The immigrants, the migrants, they're not doing that. The numbers are in. They're not deporting them. Not really. In mass, they're going after these students. So where does that leave us? Mark, Daryl, help me, help.
Yeah, you mentioned the young people who are abandoning the two-party system.
Yeah.
I ain't young, but I was out ahead of them. I left it a long time ago, and I don't care. I feel no investment in the so-called future of this country or the government or any of it, because I find it to be spiritually dead, morally bankrupt, offering us no prospects for future, any kind of a meaningful future. And what we're seeing with the Trump administration is just the inevitable.
Mhm.
It had evolved into an empire, and all empires collapse just because of moral rot, overextension of their tentacles across the planet into places where they should not be, and a failure to take care of the people that they're supposedly there to govern and to take care of. And so this is inevitable. And it's not as though this is for oppressed communities a new experience. We're concerned about the military coming in and being used as law enforcement. We're concerned about there being a shortage of consumer goods on shelves. We're concerned about the unavailability of social services and healthcare and things like that. Uh, Black people have been there. And if you think back to the early 1960s, the social safety net that we have come to rely on and to take for granted, including social service agencies and nonprofits and things like that, which are intended to be there for people really in need. It wasn't long ago, it was in certainly my lifetime, that none of that was there.
Mhm.
And so you had, and I'm going to speak specifically about the Black Panther Party. Coming out of Oakland, California, the reality for Black Oakland was that there was an absence of any type of social services, none. The reality was that the police department functioned as a roving military brigade that was regularly brutalizing people in the community, and that people were starving, people were hungry, and people were repressed and oppressed. And those are the conditions which gave birth to the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And what they said is, we're taking matters into our own hands. Let's do for self. I mean, it's one of the things I've always, admired about Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Mhm.
Do for self. If the police are going to be the enemies, if they've declared war on our community, then we will pick up our rifles and we will dare them to brutalize people in our community. If they come and they try and brutalize us, we will shoot them. And people are hungry. And so what they did is they went to stores and they got the overflow, the excess, the day old bread, all of the things that were being disposed of but for quality control, and just outright donations. And they set up food banks
Mhm.
for people in the community. The kids who were not getting an adequate education, they set up tutorial programs for them. Kids who were not getting breakfast in the morning, they set up breakfast for children programs for them. The elders who needed to get to their medical appointments, they had escorts and chauffeurs to take them to their medical appointments. They had an ambulance service. They had legal services. They had, clinics for medical care. They had sickle cell anemia screening and treatment, a whole network. And though they don't get the credit, the social services and the nonprofits and the safety net that we have come to take for granted, the Black Panther Party is the one that established the prototype, the model for that.
Say
And
that.
all those social service agencies and nonprofits were
Say that.
inspired by that.
Say that.
So
Say
I'm
that.
saying, I guess what I'm saying is that while this experience may be new for many communities in this country, it is an old experience for people who have been historically oppressed, and we've dealt with it. And my only position is that we just need to do that again,
Mhm.
that we're fully capable of it. We unfortunately find ourselves trapped within a crumbling empire. And we can either make the choice to say we're part of that. And so as it goes down the toilet, we're going to go down the toilet with it. Or we can say that we never really were a part of it. And even if we were invited into it, we don't want to be a part of it because it's spiritually bankrupt. It's a corrupt thing. It's nothing that we would want to be a part of, even if it were prosperous and successful. That we want to build something new, and that we as a community come together and we begin to take matters into our own hands. And as Elijah Muhammad said, let's do for self.
Well, I have to, we do recall that during the pandemic, um, you had farmers all over the country who were not able to sell their food. Remember the food that they were growing? They were trying to get it to the street, but then they were prevented from selling fresh vegetables to people. I mean, that was just 3, 4 years ago. And no, and then three, and then two, and then that is very real. People are getting penalized for growing food in their own yards. I mean, there's something seriously wrong here, Daryl Jones, Attorney Mark Fancher. We're going to be 250 years old next year. Republics collapse. Excuse me, empires collapse at 250 years. That's it. And we're at the saturation point. Now the question is, we went from being a constitutional monarchy to being a constitutional republic. You can't be free and slave at the same time. So we still have not worked that out on somebody else's land. Now is the time for all the bills are coming due. How about that part? So what are we going to do? I am tired of that which is performative. I am. People are starving out here. Our children are not getting educated. And this is not even just about being globally competitive. This is about having a developed mind. That is the only way you survive out here. And I'm not saying getting a degree from this school, this, that, and the third. No, I'm saying whatever gifts God gave you, to have the opportunity to develop them so that they can flourish. That's what you're supposed to do. We don't have vocational schools anymore. The people who are vocationally educated are coming in from Eastern Europe, and we're bringing them right in. I mean, no, what are we doing? So, I mean, I brought this up because I know where they're going to try to send Americans. I mean, because there is no sense of outrage, for example, that the Democrats have about Governor Abbott preventing a district in Texas from having an elected representative for almost a year. So while you're talking about raising $20 million to get out, do nothing, Democrats, do something about that. Something. That's as undemocratic as can be. When people cannot get representation and you have got a governor who is doing it and you all aren't talking about it. That to me ought to be an issue that the chairman of the party, that the vice chairs, everybody ought to be all over that, and they ought to be getting on the news. And if they are called on the news to talk about something else, you know what I learned about Reverend Jackson? Yeah, they call you and ask you to be on their show, and you have your 3 points, and you make your point. At that point, that would be my point number one. What did Willie Brown ask in 76? Where are my delegates? Jesse Jackson asked that in 84 and 88. Where are my delegates? 2025. Where's my representation in that congressional district that Sheila Jackson Lee and then Sylvester Turner, former mayor of Houston, held on to? So, the question is, how are we going to stop being performative, and what are we going to do? Because if the, Daryl, Mark, if you get the votes after 2026, the thing is, people don't have till 2026. Folks need food now. The store shelves are going to be empty in the next 2 weeks. Imports are down at the Port of Los Angeles by 35% right now. Right now. And then you're going to have the corporate media go in and perform as people go in trying to find something to eat. And they're going to be wondering where the food, there is no food. We're being starved out. They don't have an eggs problem in Canada. Why? They're looking at us like we are crazy. They have eggs. What's going on? Is anyone going to answer that question? Let alone ask it. Why do our neighbors to the north and the south, why do they have eggs? Why don't we have eggs? I'm still here. I don't want to hear crickets. This is me.
Well, Cynthia, I don't know that there's going to be obviously an easy answer to that question, but I do know this. I agree with you that, folks can't wait to 2026 to eat.
Mm-hmm.
They can't wait to 2026 for things to change and for things to get better. And I think that's a part of what we're seeing happen with the hands-off rally, with the No Kings rally, with people getting into the streets, trying to define for themselves and express their anger. The question then becomes, what's the long-term strategy from that? How do you go from being in the streets to the change in policy so that the tariffs are such that the supplies that are needed are available to the individuals, to the families, to the people. How do you get to that point? And I think a large part of that, has got to be the continue of the demand from the people, and you've got to continue to raise your voice. You got to continue to be out front and in the middle of this. I agree with what Marcus said as well, though, because there's got to be a point in time when you start circling your wagons around your community and taking care of your community and being certain that you'll have a communal response to the needs that are happening in your immediate neighborhood, in your community, your immediate surroundings. I mean, that's got to be a part of it. But the larger long-term strategy has got to be one that turns around the policies that have put us in the position of where we are now. And I do believe that a large part of that has got to be in the electing of people, representatives that are truly in it for the people and not simply for the power. And there are a lot of folks, a lot of representatives that are in it for the cigars and the publicity and all that other stuff, the pomp and circumstance of elected office. But we need more elected officials that are in it for the policy reasons, that are in it for the people reasons, that are in it to help individuals survive and to help stop the Medicare cut, to help create more health care that'll be available for people. That's what the folks are looking for. And I think that unless people are screaming about it, are talking about it, are demanding it, it's not going to happen. This administration has already shown that they're willing to be as heavy-handed as necessary. We talk about the immigration issue, and we at one point the immigration issue being for those that were undocumented. But what about the Americans that have been sent away from the country and not permitted to come back? They're just turning their blind eye and saying, "I hear what you're saying, but I don't care. I'm not going to do it. Make me do it." These are children. These are other Americans that should not have been deported, that have been deported. All of this, I think, is part of the pot of stew of anger that is brewing in the United States. And the question is, how do we turn that into something that's more demonstrative of what the people demand and want out of the government? I do believe that government serves a purpose. And I do believe that when government's operating properly, it can meet the needs of individuals when it's operating properly. But it's the people that have got to be certain that the people that are in place in those governmental positions make it operate properly.
Mark?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of dynamics at work here. As I've made, I think, pretty clear, I don't see a future for this country or this government. And I think that investing time and energy in it is really a waste. But I do think that if there is any hope that it has for turning itself around, for resurrecting itself and being born again in a new way, that does not rest with communities of color and oppressed communities. That rests with white workers. Because part of the big reason that we've gotten into this big mess is because of the America's original sin, white supremacy. And so the whole Trump phenomenon is a manifestation of white fear, white supremacy, and the belief that Donald Trump is the Messiah for white people. And they are finding it very difficult to shake that. They will hang on to him as long as they continue to stick with that notion that white people are endangered, that their population is declining, that they're being outpaced by communities of color. And it doesn't matter what happens to them economically. It doesn't matter what happens to them socially. The only thing that they really care about is, will the white race survive? And in their minds, Donald Trump and people like him are their best hope. And so they're not prepared to abandon that. So as long as they cling to that, as long as they hope as long as that's their hope, then we're going to continue going down this road. this country is going to continue going down that road. So the question is whether white workers, they're very angry. They've made that very clear. But is that anger enough to cause them to finally come to terms with the fact that they have to let go of this notion of white supremacy and abandon their white fears? For those of us who are members of communities of color, I do think that we need to look to ourselves and to look to other oppressed communities and nations in other parts of the world. And yesterday we did talk about Africa and its prospects for uniting. We've seen an electric current run through the African world, not just in Africa itself, but in other countries in the African diaspora, including this one, where people are waking up to the possibility and the possibilities of power coming from a united Africa. I think a lot of energy and education needs to be focused around that. That's where ultimately our power is going to come from, is a united Africa that's socialist. And that's where our primary political energy should be spent, in my opinion. I think secondarily, it's a question of our surviving as people. And I don't know that it's going to be possible to avoid massive hardship and suffering in the short term because of just the nature of imperialism and the impact that the crumbling of this empire is going to have on those who are within it. But we can do the best that we can to try and make the best of a bad situation. And at the same time, struggle to make alliances, form relationships, networks, and links with those in other countries and in other parts of the world who identify with us and with whom we identify, and who will, make it possible for us to survive and ultimately move forward to liberation.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left. Daryl, what say you?
We're 25% of the way through 2025. And we have an election that's coming up for 2026. And the question I think that that's being posed to the American people right now is, where do we go from here? From where we are, where do we go? Do we go back to community, or do we continue with the chaos? And I think that right now is the time. And I'm not one to throw my hands up or turn my back on government. I believe that government can work.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that government can work when the people make the government work. And that's where we are right now, is, will the people make the government work, or are we going to sit on our hands and allow government to do what it wants to do? Because left on its own, government will roll over us. We know it. It will run over us completely. But right now, the question that we've got to decide, and the decisions that we've got to make, is whether or not we're going to force government to work for us. Are we going to make the demands of government and do the things that are necessary? We're going to be in the streets, or we're going to be at the meetings, or we're going to run for those offices so that our voices are heard, because a closed mouth doesn't get fed. We need to be certain that our communities are getting fed, and that we are demanding rights for our communities and pushing for those rights from our elected officials, Santita.
Well, there you have it. Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman used to say, it works when you work it. And that is true. That having been said, we really have to make a decision, like you said, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? What are we going to do? I would add something to what you said, Mark. I think that all communities who are on the same page, who really, they're poor white people and working class white people and some wealthy ones, who actually know that not that just something is wrong, they've identified that there's something wrong, because you've got black folks who are white supremacists too. And the thing is, we have to be purged of all of that supremacy, all of the supremacy. We see it in the Middle East. Nobody is superior, nobody's inferior. We're all God's children, so everybody needs to let it go.
Yeah, and I do want to be clear that that's
Yes.
exactly what I meant, that I'm talking about a community of people of goodwill. And the blueprint for it, if anybody who's curious, it's spelled out very clearly in the first few chapters of the book of the Acts of the Apostles.
Absolutely.
where they had a multiracial, multi-ethnic community that was self-sustaining and existed independent of the empire.
Well, it is the beloved community, is it not? And that is really the goal. The goal of the Southern Christian Leadership Council Conference, which was the organization that Dr. King and Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth and others founded. That was the organization that my father came out of. The motto was to save the soul of America. Not black soul, not black folks, white folks, brown folks, yellow folks, red folks. It was to save the soul of America because they were clear that there was a cancer at the heart of America, and we in America needed saving on a soul deep level. This is a spiritual quest, everybody. That's what this is. We're all sick. Did anyone remember the movie Glory? And you saw the two main protagonists. You saw the enslaved Denzel Washington and, oh, I can't believe Matthew. Oh my goodness, he's married to Sarah Jessica Parker. They were
Broderick.
Matthew Broderick. They were two sides of the same coin. One enslaved, one free. And Matthew Broderick called his character over and said, look, you are a leader over here. I'm a leader over here. I'm a leader over here. I need you. This grand experiment that we've got, this black troop, it's not going to work without you. And we need each other. You need me. I need you. And you know what Denzel Washington's character said? He said, you know what? I guess we all have to ante up like men because we're all dirty. We're all in this. Now, the question is, are we going to get out of the muck and get rinsed off and be revived again and become renewed? We can be renewed if we change our minds and become different, become something else. We can do that. And not just, it should not be your idea. Yes, I'm a woman of faith and I am not going to back down off of it. I'm too old for that. What are we going to do? You need to ask God since God made you, God's got the manual on you. Ask God what God wants you to do and be. How about that part? And my Ariel just came on and I'm going to have to go right now, Ariel. But you know, I love you, my sweet. You know, we're almost done. I'm going to give you the final word here.
I had the time wrong.
It's all right, sweetie. But you know what? Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?
You
got it.
Say, is your self confused?
It's all right. It's all right.
Well, I heard you talking about. I heard you talking about God's will, and the following of God's will isn't a passive experience. God isn't going to deal with the weapons manufacturers or the fascist president we've got for us. We have to do God's work, and that's God's will for us, is for us to do the legwork.
Well, from the Fellowship of Reconciliation, that really ties it up for us. Really. And as a nation and as a human family, if we are going to survive, we must reconcile. And all of our supremacies and sicknesses, we have to let them go. And know that God does not love anyone more than he loves everyone. Each one, reach one, teach one. And let's make some soup so that everybody can eat. How about that part? Pull out those cans. We're going to have to do that. And you know what? I think it might be a good thing for all of us. Maybe we need buckets of chicken, not just individual meals. We need to start sharing. How about that part? Yeah, there was a time when we were more into sharing. And you know what? I think the Lord's going to put us right back there. I love you, everybody. I love you, Ariel Gold, my sister beloved, Fellowship of Reconciliation, Attorney Daryl Jones, every Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on WOL in D.C., Chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and Attorney Mark Fancher, always bringing us right back to front. Brilliant, all of you, anointed and appointed, each of you, and collectively. I love you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless.